The morning I found that gold nugget under my cabin floorboards, I thought luck had finally chosen me. By sundown, I was fighting for my life against people I used to call friends. It began while I was fixing a loose plank in my one-room shack outside Deadwood. That board had squeaked for weeks, rattling my nerves every time I crossed it. I pried it up with my knife, expecting rot or maybe a dead mouse. Instead, there it sat, a nugget as big as a chicken egg, shining like a dropped piece of sunlight. My hands shook when I lifted it. For something so small, it felt heavy as a stone. I'd spent 3 hard years in the silver mines, barely earning enough for beans and coffee. And here was more money than I'd ever seen, hiding right beneath my feet. I told myself, this changes it all. No more 12-hour days underground. No more stale bread dinners. Then Jake's voice sounded outside my door. "Tom, you in there? We're going to Murphy's." Jake Wilson was my mining partner, the nearest thing to family I had in that worn-out town. We'd split our last dollars more times than I could count. If anyone deserved to hear my news, it was him. I shoved the nugget into my pocket just as he pushed in without knocking, like always. He grinned through a face still dark with mine dust. "Come on, partner. First round's on me," he said, slapping my shoulder. The weight in my pocket pressed hard against my thigh. My heart hammered, so loud I was sure he could hear it. I opened my mouth to tell him everything, but I stopped. Maybe it was the way his eyes swept the room, taking in every corner. Maybe it was how his smile seemed too wide, too eager. Or maybe it was plain fear that made me lie to the one man who'd always stood by me. "Not tonight, Jake. I'm feeling rough," I said, adding a cough. His smile slipped. "You sure? You look different. Just tired from the shaft." He studied me for a long moment, tilting his head like I was Riddle. Then he shrugged and headed for the door. "All right, but you're buying tomorrow." When he left, I pulled out the nugget again. The lamplight made golden shadows spill over the walls. I should have felt happy. Relief, joy, excitement. Instead, a cold knot grew in my gut because I had just lied to my best friend. And somehow, I knew that was only the start. The next morning, I couldn't focus on anything. Every few minutes, I touched my pocket, making sure the nugget, wrapped in old cloth, was still there. I'd moved it from under the floorboard because I didn't trust any hiding place but my own clothes. At the mine, Jake kept shooting me sideways looks. During lunch, he sat closer than usual on the crate we used as a bench. "You've been acting odd since yesterday," he said, unwrapping a cheese sandwich. "Something happened back at your place?" "Nothing," I said too fast. His eyes narrowed. "Tom, we've worked side by side for 3 years. I know when you're lying." I forced my eyes to meet his, just thinking about my future, wondering if mining is really for me. That part wasn't a lie. The nugget made me question everything. But Jake's face darkened like I'd slapped him. "Your future? What about us? What about our claim?" "I didn't say I was leaving," I said. Even as I spoke, I felt it, some part of me already weighing a new life in California, a clean start where no one knew my name. Jake stood so fast his sandwich fell. "You know what? Keep your secrets. But don't expect me to act like everything's fine when you're plotting behind my back." He turned away before I could answer, leaving me with my racing thoughts and that growing weight in my pocket. By afternoon, it got worse. While Jake called or from the deep tunnel, I saw him talking near the entrance to Red Murphy, the saloon owner. They were too far to hear, but Red kept glancing my way. My blood turned cold. Would Jake tell Red I was acting strange? As I watched, Jake motioned toward me and shook his head like he was fed up. When the whistle blew at 5, I tried to talk to him, but he brushed past and headed straight to Murphy's with 3 other miners. I wanted to follow and explain, but I didn't dare with that nugget burning a hole in my pocket and half the town sure to be at the saloon. So I went home, my mind churning. What if Jake suspected I'd found something? What if he'd noticed me checking my pocket? What if he searched my cabin while I was out? As I reached my door, I saw movement in the shadows between buildings across the street. Someone had been watching my place. My hand flew to the nugget, and I realized my secret might already be leaking. The real question was how many people were beginning to think Tom Miller had stumbled on something worth bleeding for. I barely slept. Every creak made me jump, certain someone was trying my door. When dawn came, I felt like I'd been run over by a cart. But the worst was just starting. I was hardly dressed when voices rose outside my window, several of them angry. I peered through the dirty glass, and my stomach dropped. Jake stood in the street with 5 miners, all staring at my cabin. Red Murphy was there. So was Samuel Hayes, the banker, and even Martha Wells from the general store. My hands shook as I listened. "I'm telling you, something's off with Tom," Jake said, loud in the morning air. "Yesterday, he acted like a man with a secret. A big one." "What kind of secret?" Red asked, spitting tobacco. "The kind that makes a man lie to his best friend and talk about leaving town in a hurry." I thought, "Jake, you fool, how could you?" Then Samuel spoke, and my blood iced over. "You know, I was thinking about what Jake told me last night. Tom's been working the same dead claim for 3 years, never found so much as a flake. But yesterday, he came to my bank asking about procedures for, how did he say it, theoretical large deposits." The group went silent. I could feel the gears turning. Martha stepped forward, voice sharp as a razor. "And he came by my store real early, asking for supplies for long travel. Paid cash, and he hasn't had cash for months." "Son of a, he found something," Red growled. "And he's fixing to run instead of sharing with his partner." I watched Jake's face shift from confusion to understanding to pure anger. That look hit like a fist. But what came next was worse. "If Tom Miller struck gold on that claim, half of it belongs to me," Jake said, louder now. "We've been partners 3 years. I've got the same right to what he found. If there's gold here, we all deserve a piece." Samuel added, "Tom's been using tools bought on credit for my place. That Nugget was dug with my equipment." Martha chimed in, "And he's been buying from my store on account. I'd say I'm owed something." I couldn't believe it. In minutes they'd jumped from suspicion to declaring ownership of something they hadn't even seen. Worst of all, Jake nodded along. "You're right," he said at last. "Tom owes all of us. And if he won't be reasonable, he let the threat hang like gun smoke." I backed away from the window, heart battering my ribs. Yesterday, they were my neighbors, my friends, my partner. Now they were a mob, and I was the mark. The nugget felt heavier than iron. I was learning why men kill over gold. Finding it is the easy part. Staying alive afterward is the trouble. Within an hour, the rumor burned through Deadwood like dry grass. Boots stomped past. Voices rose as the crowd outside my door grew. I stayed back from the windows, but I heard enough to know I was in deep trouble. "Tom Miller, we know you're in there," Jake shouted. "Come out and let's talk like civilized men." I gripped my rifle and called, "There's nothing to discuss, Jake. You're trespassing on my land." A harsh laugh rose from several throats. "Your land," Samuel yelled. "Built with lumber bought on credit for my store. I'd say I own half that cabin." Another voice added, "He's 3 months behind on payments. The bank owns the rest." My throat went dry. In all the excitement, I'd forgotten what I owed. Red's voice cut across the noise like a dull knife. "Here's how this goes, Tom. You bring out what you found, we split it fair, and everyone walks away smiling. Stay in there acting greedy, and we'll come take it." "You can't just steal from me," I yelled back. Even as I said it, I heard how foolish it sounded. "Steal." Jake's boots thumped right outside the door. "Partner, after 3 years of splitting everything 50-50, you think you can keep secrets and run? That ain't stealing. That's justice." Metal scraped wood. Someone was prying the latch. "Tom, you've got 10 seconds, Red called. "After that, we're coming in." I thought about the Nugget, about a new life it could buy, about getting out of this cursed town. But I also pictured what would happen if I handed it over. They'd tear each other apart, and I'd be left with nothing but their hate. 5 seconds, Tom. My mind raced. The back window was small, but maybe I could squeeze through and bolt for the hills. I'd have to leave everything behind and live like a fugitive. Time's up. The door exploded inward. Jake burst in first, with Red and 3 minors right behind. Their faces were twisted with greed and fury, and everyone had a gun. "Where is it?" Jake demanded, pointing his pistol at my chest. "Where's the gold?" I raised my rifle, though my hands shook. "Get out of my home, Jake. I mean it. Your home." Samuel pushed in after them. "You're 2 weeks from eviction. This place belongs to the bank. Search him," Red barked. "And rip these boards up if you must." As 6 hostile faces closed in, I understood the Nugget had already cost me everything I thought was mine. My home, my partner, my friends, maybe even my life. The question wasn't whether I'd keep the gold. It was whether I'd live to spend a single speck of it. It all turned wild in a breath. Jake lunged for my rifle. I swung hard. The stock cracked against his jaw with a sound like a shot. He reeled back, blood pouring, crashing into Red. "Kill him," Jake screamed, spitting a broken tooth. The greedy Red attacked me. I knew then there'd be no talking, no deal, no safe way out. They'd convinced themselves my gold was theirs, and they were ready to spill blood for it. I dove for the back window as Samuel's pistol roared. Splinters flew from the frame inches from my head. I hurled myself through the opening, glass slicing my arms and cheek as I hit the dirt behind the cabin. "He's running," Red bellowed from inside. "Don't let him get away." I scrambled up and sprinted for the trees, the Nugget thudding in my pocket with every stride. Behind me, boots pounded. Men shouted. Guns were drawn. "Circle the gulch," Jake yelled, voice thick from his broken jaw. "Cut him off before the main trail." 3 years of friendship, and now he was hunting me like I was rabid. I crashed through brush while they spread out behind me. They weren't neighbors anymore. They were a pack of wolves that had tasted blood. Then it got worse. A gunshot cracked from town, followed by Martha's scream. "Help. They're robbing the bank." My blood went cold. While Jake's mob chased me, someone else was looting. Samuel had left his vault unguarded to run after my gold, and opportunists were taking it. "Sam, your bank." Red yelled from somewhere in the trees. Samuel cursed hard. "You 3 keep after Tom," he shouted. "Red, Jake with me." The group split, but that didn't make me safer. It meant 3 armed men were still on my trail while the rest of the town fell into madness. I splashed through a creek, soaking my boots and pants, and understood the truth of what I'd started. That Nugget hadn't only turned my friends against me. It had broken the order of Deadwood. People were robbing, forming hunting parties, dropping any pretense of law. All because of the chunk of gold burning in my pocket, like a coal from hell. Their voices bounced off the canyon walls. They were closing in. I kept running until I realized I was trapped. The 3 men on me had driven me up into Dead Horse Canyon, where the walls rose straight up, smooth as a cut. The only path out was back the way I came, and they had it blocked with rifles ready. My lungs burned like I'd breathed acid. My shirt stuck to me with sweat and the sting of glass cuts. Step by step, I climbed higher, hoping for a crack or ledge, any escape. Then new voices echoed from the canyon mouth, and my heart nearly stopped. Tom Miller. It wasn't just 3 anymore. It sounded like half the town. "We know you're up there. Nowhere left to run." I pressed against the rock and peered down. At least 15 people stood at the entrance, all armed, all staring up. Jake was there, face swollen and bloody. Red held his shotgun. Samuel looked like he'd just fought in his own bank. Worse, there were faces I didn't know, drifters, prospectors, claim jumpers, drawn by whispers of gold like vultures to a carcass. "Listen up, Tom," Jake called, voice echoing. "The town's gone to hell because of your greed. Martha got shot in the robbery. 2 men are dead over fake claims. This is on you." My stomach knotted. Martha had always treated me fair, gave me credit when I was broke, never asked extra. Now she was bleeding because of a chain I set in motion. "You got one choice," Samuel shouted. "Come down with that gold, and we'll make it quick. Stay put, and we'll smoke you out like a rat." I touched the Nugget through my pocket. Part of me wanted to throw it, let them tear each other apart, so Martha's blood wouldn't be on my conscience. But I knew better. Even if I gave it up, they couldn't let me live. I'd seen too much and knew too much. Robberies, threats, the truth about them. Dead men don't tell stories. As if he'd read my mind, Red called, "Don't think you're walking away, Tom. You started a war here. We can't have witnesses." I shut my eyes and tried to think. The walls were too steep. The trickle of water wouldn't last. They could wait me out or shoot until I dropped. Then more voices drifted from the other end of the canyon. I was surrounded. "Looks like more folks heard about your treasure." Jake laughed, empty of humor. "Hope that nugget was worth dying for." The sun slid down, shadows stretching long. My choice was plain: fight and likely die, or give up and surely die. The gold that promised freedom had turned into a death sentence. And the worst part was knowing that even if I fell tonight, the violence I'd unleashed would keep spreading through Deadwood like sickness until only blood and greed were left. As darkness settled over Dead Horse Canyon, I made the hardest choice of my life. I pulled the nugget from my pocket and lifted it where the moon could find it. Even dim light made it glow like a fallen star. The mob went silent. "You want this?" I shouted. "Come get it." I hurled the nugget toward the far end where the stranger stood. It clattered into the shadow against the stone. What followed was exactly what I'd hoped, and exactly what I feared. The canyon exploded into chaos. Jake's crowd rushed the spot where it landed, but the newcomers were already scrambling over rock to claim it. In seconds, gunfire cracked like firecrackers, both groups blasting at shapes in the dark. "It's mine." "I saw it land," someone screamed. "Like hell, it's ours." Jake roared back, shooting blind into shadow. I used the confusion to climb down the opposite wall, inch by quiet inch, while they tore each other apart below. Bodies fell on both sides, but their greed was louder than sense. Red went down first. Samuel's shotgun took him center chest. But Samuel didn't celebrate. A drifter's rifle punched through him soon after. "This is what I've done," I thought. Turned neighbors into killers over a rock. I hit the canyon floor. Jake's shape stood against the stone, still firing at ghosts. His face a mask of blood and madness. Nothing left of the man who shared his last dollar with me yesterday. A bullet hissed by my ear as I sprinted toward the mouth. Behind me, the fight hit its peak. Men screamed, died, and kept shooting for gold no one could see in the dark. I didn't look back. I ran until my chest burned and the gunshots faded to wind. When I finally stopped, the canyon was quiet except for the breeze. 16 people had chased me into Dead Horse Canyon. I was the only one walking out. I staggered toward what was left of Deadwood, thinking it might be over. It wasn't. Smoke rose from the town center. The bank robbery had spread into something worse. Buildings burned. Distant shots cracked as the chaos I'd set loose kept rolling. The nugget was gone, buried in the canyon with men who died trying to grab it. But the damage remained. Deadwood was eating itself alive. And it was because Tom Miller found something he should have left hidden. I reached town just as the general store collapsed in a shower of sparks. The place I'd called home for 3 years was dying. Bodies lay in the street. Window glass glittered across the ground. Doors hung limp on broken hinges. The air reeked of gunpowder and scorched wood. Martha sat on the steps of what used to be her store, pressing a bloody bandage to her shoulder. When she saw me, her face twisted with pain and anger. "Tom Miller," she whispered, "look what you've done." I dropped to one knee, guilt crushing my chest. "Martha, I'm sorry. I never meant for any of this." She laughed, low and bitter. "Sorry? 15 people are dead, Tom. 15. All because you couldn't share like a decent man." I wanted to tell her about the canyon, about how Jake and the others killed each other over that gold. But what use would that be? The town was already broken. "Where will you go now?" she asked. I stared at the flames chewing through the buildings, at dreams turned to ash. "I don't know. Somewhere no one knows my name." "Good," she said, forcing herself up. "Because if I see you again, I'll put a bullet in you myself." I helped her stand, despite her anger. Then I walked to my cabin one last time. The door hung splintered. Inside was wreck and ruin. They'd torn everything apart looking for more gold. My few things were scattered and useless on the floor. I gathered what little I could and tied it to my horse. Before I climbed into the saddle, I looked back over the town I'd helped destroy. The truth hit me hard. I'd found enough gold to set me up, but I'd lost what mattered, my friends, my home, and the small piece of conscience I had left, buried in Dead Horse Canyon with that cursed nugget. As I rode out, I made a promise to myself. I'd never speak of what happened here. I'd never tell anyone about the gold, the men who died for it, or the town that ripped itself apart over a shining stone. Some finds are too dangerous for one man. Some secrets are better taken to the grave. 3 months later, I found work at a silver mine outside Denver. I keep my head down, swing my tools, and don't talk about where I came from. The other miners figure I'm just another drifter earning an honest wage. They're not wrong. The Tom Miller who found that nugget died in Dead Horse Canyon with the others. What walks around now is a ghost carrying the weight of 15 graves and a lesson learned too late. Gold can make you rich, but greed will strip you bare. Sometimes the price of wealth is everything you thought you valued. I remember the first time I saw that nugget in the lamplight, how it threw warm gold across my cabin walls and made me think of a new life. I also remember how fast that warmth turned cold once I lied to Jake. I replay the steps that followed, my hand in my pocket at the mine, the way Jake's eyes kept drifting toward me, his talk with Red at the entrance, me slipping home instead of facing it. I wish I could take back the lie. Maybe nothing would have changed. Maybe the moment anyone knew, the town would have torn me apart anyway. But I still wish. At night, I dream of the canyon. Bullets snapping past my head. Red dropping like a sack. Samuel falling seconds later. Jake's face twisted by rage and pain. I wake with the taste of dust and the echo of gunshots in my chest. Some nights I see Martha's eyes across the firelight, clear and hurt. I owe her more than the debt of bandages and broken glass. I owe her a town that still stands. I can't give that back. I keep to simple habits now. I eat plain, save what I can, and keep my distance. I stop drinking at crowded saloons. Too many stories get born in places like that. Too many promises get made and broken under cheap lamps and loud pianos. When men brag about luck, I go quiet. When talk turns to claims, I finish my meal and head to my bunk. I don't carry posters in my pocket. I don't chase rumors or follow shovel marks. If a board in my floor starts to creak, I nail it down and never look under it. Some doors don't need opening. On Sundays, I sit by the creek behind the camp and hold a smooth stone, not for luck, but for weight, to remind me how fast fortune can turn heavy in your hand. I imagine the nugget still out there in the rocks of Dead Horse Canyon, buried under gravel and bone. Maybe the winter flood carried it deeper. Maybe some hungry drifter will find it one day and start the same fire all over again. Or maybe it will stay lost forever, quiet as a secret the earth refuses to share. I think about Jake more than I want to. He wasn't all bad. He shared when he had nothing. He laughed easy after long shifts. He got mean when fear told him he was being cheated. I can't say I was better. The moment I closed my hand around that gold, I shut him out. I told myself I was protecting us both, but deep down I was lining up a new life without him. That's a hard truth to carry. If I meet a man named Jake down the road, I'll buy him a coffee and listen instead of hiding what's in my pocket. If I can't do that, I'll keep walking. I owe at least that much to the ghosts. Sometimes I picture Deadwood before the fire, how Martha's shelves looked full on payday, how the banker's windows shone in the morning sun, how Red's piano fought the noise each night. I see the faces of men I used to greet by name. I try to remember the way the town smelled after rain, when the dust settled and the streets felt almost clean. Memory is a kind liar. It softens the edges and hides the rot, but it also shows you what you broke. I don't plan to go back. If I ever ride near those hills again, I'll keep to the far trail and won't look down. Let the graves rest. Let the burned ground grow grass. That's not a place for me anymore. I don't pretend I'm a better man now. I'm just a quieter one. I've learned to count what I have without reaching for more. I've learned that a single secret can turn neighbors into hunters. I've learned that the shine of gold fades fast when it's paid for with blood. If a young miner asks me for advice, I keep it short. Share what you can, tell the truth early, and don't dig holes you're not ready to climb out of. Most of them laugh and say it sounds like preacher talk. Maybe it does. I'm no preacher. I'm a man who ran, who watched friends die, who left a town burning behind him. That's all the sermon I've got. On quiet evenings, I take out a small pouch, not gold, just an old leather one I use for tobacco, and set it on the table like a weight to hold me steady. I roll a cigarette and think of how fast a life can tip. One loose board, one flash of light, one choice to keep silent. I breathe in and out and let the smoke curl toward the rafters. I tell myself the same words every time. Gold might fill your pocket, but greed will empty your soul. If I forget that, I'm back in Dead Horse Canyon with the moon on my face and a dozen guns below me. I won't forget. So that's the truth I carry forward. The nugget is gone. The town is gone. The man I was is gone. What's left is a set of lessons written in ashes. Fortune without trust is a curse. Secrets eat through friendship like acid. And some treasures are better buried where no one will ever find them. I work. I sleep. I wake. I keep my promises when I make them, and I don't make many. If the ground ever offers me another bright stone, I'll tip my hat, cover it back up, and walk away. Some riches are worth less than the peace of an honest day, and I aim to keep what little peace I've earned.